it's something that I've been trying to figure out for a long time. How can I change? Anybody else? And what I'm understanding here, and what this series that we're talking about is all about, is that I haven't been going deep enough. And I don't mean to, make myself feel badly about that. It's all kind of being unpacked and unfurled. And as I'm in the process of understanding what change looks like, and really, I love the word transformation. That's a good word, isn't it? Transformation. Have you seen the Johnny Depp version of Alice in Wonderland? I love that. You should watch it. And in fact, Lewis Carroll's brilliant. Lewis Carroll was a brilliant writer, and there's a great scene in the book and played out for us by Hollywood in their great visual effects is the caterpillar, just before Alice is making the decision to become who she is and take on the Jabberwocky. The caterpillar is hanging upside down in a corner of the garden, and he's winding himself inside a cocoon. And Alice says, "Mr. Caterpillar, what are you doing?" And he says, "I'm transforming." Wouldn't it be nice if someone walked up to you and said, "Hey, Heinz, what are you doing?" And Heinz went, "I'm transforming." Right before your eyes. And really, I mean, that metamorphosis is the picture. That's the word. That's the New Testament word for change. Metamorpho. To change like a caterpillar to a butterfly. And what a brilliant mystery. I just love that idea. And when I say that I haven't been looking deep enough, what I think I've really been doing with myself, especially, is just trying to make myself a better caterpillar. Does that make sense to you? Taping on some wings, right? Putting on a better hat, and I'm a really good caterpillar. That's not the idea, however. And so what I've been understanding and learning really over the summer, actually since early last spring, is that if I don't change in what I believe to be true about life, if what I believe to be true about life doesn't change, I am not going to be able to make any lasting changes in my life, and actually the change process will just be frustrating for me, unless, now there is a type of personality that kind of making a decision and disciplining themselves to change works. And I resent those people. Not really. But, I mean, I'm really like, wow. You know the people that say, you know what, I'm going to do this, and then they make a plan and put it on their calendar, and they actually do it? And something actually changes? It's like, how can you do that? It never doesn't work for me. And so I just, one of the stories one of my beliefs is that, well, you're not the kind of person that can really change the way you want to. You don't have enough self-discipline. You don't have what it takes to be the kind of person that you really know you could be. Now that, I think, is the ultimate, frustration isn't a strong enough word. It's the ultimate disappointment. I know what I think I could be. But the road is barred. The road to who I could be is barred because of who I am. And so, you just kind of walk away. Well, that doesn't work. Well, I'm not an uncoverer of secrets. But I do know that if we can change what we think, change the way we think about life, everything will change. Now, that's why the word metanoia is so important in the Jesus version of the Newer Testament. And in his words, what he says time and time again is, you have to metanoia. You have to metanoia. You have to metanoia. What does that mean? it's translated repent, which has become defined by the angry person standing on the corner with the sign. But it's not an angry word. It simply means change the way you think about life. That's what metanoia means. And it's the one thing that will instigate the kind of wholesale changes in my life that are necessary for me to become who I am. What is a belief system? Now I'm not talking about your kind of God beliefs so much, although they're included. I'm not talking about whether you believe what you believe about Mary or what you believe about a virgin birth or what you believe about the Bible. I'm not talking about that so much, although it's included in this. I'm talking more about how you believe life works, who you believe yourself to be, the stories that we tell ourselves to explain life. That's what we're talking about. So there's really three big areas. What I believe about life itself, what I believe about God, what I believe about myself. Those are three good places to at least begin. What do you believe about life itself? Now, what you believe about life is, how do you find that out? You listen to yourself. So let's just draw up a scenario. You are driving down the road and you're pulling up to the stoplight and you're finally done from a long day and somebody rear-ends you. Now, what you believe about life comes out. And if you're in a relationship, what your partner believes about life comes out too. Right? And I'm not comfortable with someone saying, Joe, I want you to sit down and take a sheet of paper and write down what you believe about life. Because I'm not sure I can do that honestly. Does that make sense? So when someone asks me to do that, I get immediately suspicious because I think I believe great things about life. But when something like that happens, you try to make that a little painful, but not like the big one, right? But when something like that happens, I think immediately, oh, I can't believe someone would do this to me. Or, you idiot, didn't you? Or then your spouse calls, and the new car? Yeah, I'm fine, honey. I'm fine. It's okay, don't worry. I'm fine. Or, I knew something like this. This is a good one. Here's a great clue. I knew something like this was going to happen. Why? Because things are going so well. And why shouldn't they? Well, they just don't for me. See, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I believe to be true about life. That things, if they're going well, I better be careful because the shoe's going to fall, right? A lot of things that we believe, and the hardest thing is to kind of list them all. And so I can't and I won't. But what I understand is that what you think you believe about life doesn't really matter. I think I love everybody. Why is that so funny? Did we run into each other someplace? I think I love everybody. And I had this happen this week. I was tired. It was a late night. I was on my way home. I had to stop at Safeway because they have Ben & Jerry's on sale. 4. If you get 4, they're only $2.99 a piece. And there was a line. It was weird. There was a line of people. And you know how at Safeway you can stand in one part to do the self-checkout? And so I was standing in that line, and then a woman kind of came behind, and as soon as one of those checkout things opened up, she dashed around me and got in her spot. Took my spot. Now, I didn't say anything, but my immediate reaction was, wait a second, that's not fair. You cut in line. And then I thought, what are you, in 4th grade? But see, that's when I learn what I believe about life. I believe, at some level, I am the center of the universe. And if things don't go as planned, that there's a problem that needs to be taken care of. And so one of the practices that I've recommended is whenever you get in line, let someone ahead of you, and you'll be able to hear yourself. It's like we have this wonderful little dog, Daisy, who is a Chihuahua mutt, and she doesn't like it when some things happen, but she knows she can't react, and so she'll sit on Lynn's lap and she'll go like, boy, I oughta. If your wife wasn't here, I'd really. And that's kind of how there's this low-grade rumbling deep in my chest that says, why, don't you know I've been caring for people all day? Instead of, wow, I wonder what's going on in this woman's life. She's in such a hurry. And I wonder if I can pay her bill for her. I don't know. So that's how we learn what we believe about life, by listening, by paying attention. But we don't do that very often. So if you can fill in the sentences, life is, God is, I am, and if you can do that with some accuracy, you'll begin to see what you think is true about life. And I say this, and I said it last week, we must constantly survey everything to the right of the verb. Everything to the right of the verb tells me what I think about life. God is angry with me. Well, if you live that way, you will not be able to be everything and who you could possibly be. Life is, I am. Now, there is just so much here. What we need to do is understand a little bit about what we believe and then begin to understand what could be true. What if I was not at the center of the universe? What if God isn't angry with me? What if life is not bent on my destruction? What if I am okay? Beautiful. How do we know that? Well, Jesus hints at it when he says in John chapter 8, you will know the truth, aletheia, it's a beautiful word, truth, and the truth will set you free. Free from what? Free from yourself, really. Free from the belief systems that bind you in places in which you're currently bound, in which I'm currently bound. And I have them. I have to tell you, for some reason, last Monday was a very difficult day for me. And it's a very interesting thing. Mondays, for me in my work, I work on Monday, but Monday I get up and I listen to the sermon. So today, I'll listen to today's sermon tomorrow. And I go, okay, could have said that a little better, or what if I didn't think I finished that thought, I better turn around and kind of bring that back next week, and I kind of just assess that sermon, and I spend time alone with God and praying, and I begin preparation for the next week's sermon. That's my Monday. And this last Monday, the voices in my head were so terribly loud, I haven't experienced anything like it for months and months. Now, what kind of voices? Well, here are my belief systems. You better start doing a better job on Sundays or they're not going to like you. Yeah, so right? It's all really about performance. Really. For everybody. What if you didn't show up? It's all about what you do and how well you do it, and so you better keep ahead. I don't think that you're doing enough. You better work a little harder. How many books did you bring home to read today? Because I don't think it's enough. And for an hour, my brain was just talking to me. Now, this is a beautiful thing when you hear your brain talking to you. Because it means what? Now, this is a big aha. It means that you are not your thoughts. And so after this went on for a while, and I kind of enjoyed basking in it. It's nice, isn't it, to have a pity party? You're right, brain. I have it so hard, and these people, and my children, and my wife, and this house, and all this stuff, and Now, when I was young, I was taught, when I felt that way, to look at someone who had it worse than I did, and that would make me feel better, but it doesn't. All it does is make me feel guilty, right? And so what I've learned to do is I've stopped and I just go, okay, what are these thoughts? What are these voices in my head? What is this? It's just, and so you have to make a decision. This is not true. What I hear myself saying is not true. And it doesn't mean I don't hear it. So then for a little while I spent time saying, okay, what is true? What is true, Joe? Now, I have to tell you that on Monday for me, the voices won. You ever have those days? Okay? So you need to know your pastor has those days too. And this isn't just so you feel sorry for me at all. Don't feel sorry for me. And don't call me on Monday. But there are days when these voices win. But what I know now is that I know in the back of my mind that they're not true. And I know if I have something good to eat and I get some sleep, I can take another run at them the next day. And I know, actually, if I talk to someone about it. Now, in the past, I wouldn't talk to anybody about it. Why? Well, because pastors shouldn't think that way. Now, again, put yourself in this story, right? I love this quote by St. Augustine, and I had it in the notes last week, but we didn't really spend any time on it. Listen to what he says. He's talking to God. Late have I loved you, O beauty ever told, ever new. Late have I loved you. Listen to this. You were within me, and I was outside myself. Now that's an interesting one. What does he mean? And it was there that I sought you. See, that's what we do, right? This is the prodigal son story. This is a lot of stories. You were within me, God, but I was looking for you where? Everywhere else. That's what I do. I look for God everywhere. But where is He? He's in me. That is where I'll find Him. Late have I loved you. I looked for you everywhere. But I couldn't find you because the one place I didn't go is where you were. Now, God is everywhere, right? But if you want to connect with Him, you have to connect with Him inside. It was there that I sought you and myself disfigured. I rushed upon the beautiful things you have made. You were with me, but I was not with you. I love that because it describes so beautifully the condition. What do we believe? Transformation as opposed to short-term discipline change. I've thought about that a lot this week. What I really want is wholesale transformation. And I'm in the midst of it. It's not like I'm not. I am. My spelling isn't. But I am. I had some computer trouble this morning, so give me a break. I was working on this computer problem for 2 hours this morning. Amit came in, and 5 minutes later, it was fixed. Yeah, it's funny. Paul talks about this in Ephesians 4, and I want to read this passage to you, and I want us to become familiar with it. In Ephesians chapter 4, Paul is talking about the way life works. And listen to these words. I'm going to actually start reading in verse 17. So I tell you this, and insist on it, that you must no longer live as the Gentiles do. Gentiles. It's just someone, in Paul's mind, it's someone who's not living in the way. In the futility, so don't live like you used to, in other words. And look how he describes them. In the futility of their thinking. The way they process life. They are darkened in their understanding, what they understand about life. And they're separated from the life of God because of the ignorance that is in them due to the hardening of their hearts, having lost all sensitivity. They've given themselves over to sensuality, to indulge in every kind of impurity with a continual lust for more. So they don't get life, and so what they've done is they've just said, oh, the heck with it, let's just enjoy ourselves. You, however, did not come to know Christ that way. Surely you heard of him and were taught in him in accordance with the truth that is in Jesus. You were taught, listen now, with regard to your former way of life, to put off your old self, which is being corrupted by its deceitful desires, to be made new, where? In the attitude of your minds, and to put on the new self, created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness. Therefore, each of you must put off falsehood and speak truthfully to his neighbor. And Paul goes on. Listen to this, and here's where I want to end it. He who has been stealing. So here is the transformation paradigm that I want to settle into this morning for just a couple minutes. Are you with me okay? He who has been stealing must steal no longer, but must work, doing something useful with his own hands, that he may have something to share with those in need. Now, what does that have to do with anything? Well, Paul says, what I want you to do is take off your old life it's like a dirty shirt. That's the idea. Put off, take it off, like pull it up over your head and throw it into the hamper. That's the idea. And you have to understand that what Paul wants is to change at the level of our desires. Yeah, wait a minute. No, this red lights are going off because I was never taught that my desires need to change. I was taught that I need to be strong enough to say no to my desires. Were you taught that? No, I'm not saying that that's wrong. I mean, some desires will creep up on you and you know if you give in to them, you're in trouble. But ultimately, transformation changes what I desire. Wouldn't it be nice if you started wanting the right things instead of wanting and going, oh, no, I can't have that. I've got to. This is what religion is. And religion as opposed to, when I use religion here today, I'm using it not in a positive way, but religion as a system of beliefs, as opposed to becoming spiritually alive to God and kind of transformed. What religion does is it creates fences around your desires so that you don't get close to them and you'll never trespass. In fact, in this little system of let him who stole steal no more, what religion says is, for those of you who are stealing, what's the solution? Stop stealing. Stop it. It's one of the 10 Commandments. Do not steal. Now, I get that. And there's a law that says I shouldn't steal. That is non-systemic change. If I'm strong enough to be the kind of person who was stealing, if I'm strong enough as an individual to then stop stealing, chances are I probably was never stealing in the first place. This is the frustrating thing about change. The people who have strong enough character to stop doing whatever it is that we're talking about, probably they were never doing it in the first place. They're the people who can go, okay, yeah, I get that, and then never struggle with it. And so what religion does is it makes rules and says, do this, don't do this. That's different than transformation. And this is the beauty of this passage is that Paul gives us this beautiful paradigm. He says this, spiritual transformation is this. You who were stealing, stop stealing, yes. But that's not the end. That's not the goal. I mean, What's the goal? What's the opposite of stealing? Giving, Ken said. You who are stealing, steal no more, but what? Work. So is work the opposite of stealing? Well, no. Why would you work? Paul says, so you will have to give to those who have needs. When is a thief no longer a thief? When he stops stealing? No. When he begins giving. That's transformation. Transformation is I'm taking things, and what changes to make this change? What I believe is true about life. On one hand, I believe that life owes me something. And so, since life owes me, and I'm not getting it, I'll take what I think it owes me. On the other hand, I believe, then that's one set of beliefs. On the other hand, my belief system begins to change so that I realize I have an obligation as a human to give. You see how completely different that is? And so instead of having a desire to steal, which has to be squelched, I really want that, but I won't do it. Now that's a step, right? If we go over here to this person now has to give, that's a complete change in the desires of my heart. Lao Tzu, as we said years ago, called this your Wu Wei. I love that. What is Wu Wei? Your Wu Wei is the first reaction which reveals the character of your heart. Religion says, if you desire the wrong things, just make sure you don't act on those desires. That creates frustrated humans who explode at some point. Spiritual transformation says, change your desires. Change at the level of your desires. And underneath all of those things are what you believe to be true about life. I picked up this book this week. I had bought it years and years and years ago. A book called Life Mapping by Bill Cohen. A unique approach to finding your vision and reaching your potential. I thought, I wonder, and this first chapter has to do with beliefs. And I thought, perfect, I wonder what this is. I'll bet, and this is how I think, I'll bet that I bought this book all of those years ago and it sat dormant just for today. And I started reading it, right? It was, Lynn was watching baseball, and I was reading this book, and then all of a sudden, I got to chapter 3, and I tore the book in half. I said, what did you just do? I said, this is such, I won't say it, drivel. What do you mean? Well, this says, if you're stealing, you should just stop stealing. Now, it says it in a more complicated way. And you know, no offense to Bill Cohen. I'm sure he's doing his best. But what he says is, I just tore his book in half. That is a little offensive. But I get so tired of it. And this is why. I'll tell you, this is why. Number one, because I see people who are oppressed by it and can't continue to live in it. And number two, because it did not serve me well. In fact, I think it nearly ruined me. This is his system. See if it sounds familiar. You write down what you believe to be true about life. Well, that's the first red flag to me, because I don't trust myself. You change those beliefs into principles. You make those principles into goals. You come up with activities for every goal, and then you schedule those activities into your daily, weekly life, and bam, you've got transformation. And I say, Bill Cohen, if I could, I would, and I wouldn't need your book. But how do I change? Someone who is wanting to be who I could be, but I don't know how. And if I wrote down my beliefs, I would tell you I believe all the right things. Right? And if I kind of principalize those, and then what I would do is I would schedule those goals and make them into activities, and then the week would come and I wouldn't do one of them, and then at the end of the week I would feel much worse than I did at the beginning of the week. And I know that it's true not only of me, it's also true of you, because you have just as much exercise equipment in your closet as I do. Our goals, we have such great ideas we're going to. But listen, friends, if we don't change at the level of our desires and get to the bottom of things, we'll never be able to change. This is why Jesus hung out with people that he did and didn't hang out with religious people. I could give, time after time after time. John chapter 3, one of the most famous stories in all of the Bible. Jesus is hanging out in the evening, and this great teacher, who was a Pharisee, he was brilliant in the way he knew the First Testament. He came to Jesus at night, and he came at night because he didn't want the other Pharisees seeing that he was coming to talk to this rabbi, Nicodemus. And Nicodemus begins, and Jesus looks at him and he says, "Nicodemus, are you a teacher of the Jews and you do not know these things?" Jesus is incredulous. "Well, then what are you teaching?" And indeed, what Nicodemus is teaching, he knows he's not teaching the right thing. That's why he comes. But what he's teaching is this. Suck it up. You know what to do. Just get it done. That's religion. It doesn't work. It doesn't work for me. I wish I could suck it up and get it done. I can't. Jesus says this to Nicodemus. "Nicodemus, how could you be a teacher of the Jews and don't know these things?" Nicodemus, and here are the famous words that have been twisted. You've got to be what? Reborn. Born again. Born from above. You've got to change the way you think about everything. Everything you think about God and religion is backwards. It's like you need to be reborn. And so what is Nicodemus, left-brained Nicodemus? Nicodemus is going, wow, I think, I can't imagine Jesus using a metaphor. So he says, must I enter into my mother's womb again and be born? I mean, come on. Wouldn't you just slap that guy right there? It's a good thing it was Jesus he was talking to. Jesus is like, dude, come on. And then Jesus clears it up by saying this. I better read it. Let me read it just because it's just too good to get off. Listen. "You are Israel's teacher," said Jesus, "and you don't understand these things. I tell you the truth. We speak of what we know and we testify to what we have seen, but still you people do not accept my testimony. I've spoken to you of earthly things and you don't believe. How then will you believe if I speak of heavenly things? No one has ever gone into heaven except the one who came from heaven, Son of Man, just as Moses lifted up the snake and the wind blows where it wills. I tell you the truth, no one can enter the kingdom of God unless he's born of water and of spirit. Flesh gives birth to flesh, but the Spirit gives birth to spirit. You should not be surprised at my saying you must be reborn. The wind blows wherever it pleases. You hear its sound, but you cannot tell where it comes from or where it's going. So it's with everyone born of the Spirit." And Nicodemus goes, "Oh, now I get it." It's like, what did you just say? Why? Why would he say that? Why would Jesus not just say, okay, here, dude, let me just give you 4 simple ways to increase your awareness and be reborn? Because there aren't 4 simple ways. Now, all my life I was told there were, but there aren't. What was Jesus trying to say? A life with God is like a life with God, like a life with anyone else. Give me 4 good principles to have a better relationship with my wife. Well, we could get close, right? Listen. Don't do what you think you should do. Do the opposite. And we could go on and on. But what works for me and what works for you, they're different. Everything is different. There aren't 4 keys or 4 principles or 4 steps or 3 There just aren't. We have to understand what we believe about life. We have to begin to see how that has shaped us and gotten us kind of into the disfigurement that we may be in. And we have to begin to understand how to change what we believe about life into what is really true about life. And part of that is, one of the things I believe about God is, and I was raised with it, is that He's angry with me and He's just waiting for me to screw up again. One of the things I believe about myself, because I was raised with it, is you'll never live up to your potential because you can't pay attention. One of the things I've learned about church is they'll grind you to a pulp because they don't really care about you. They just want what they... right? We have all of these, and I'm not talking about pie in the sky beliefs. I'm talking about what's really true. Now, I know that none of those things are true. But unless I begin to believe what the truth is about that, the truth is about Joe Everly, that I will live up to my potential, and that your job as a teacher, shame on you. I wish someone would have stood up for me. Said maybe if you had something interesting to say, he'd pay attention. Yeah, I grew up in a time when it wasn't ADD, it was just bad character. But I don't blame anyone for that. Because it's what brought me to my knees and brought me to God and began to help me see that can't be true. What they said can't be true. It wasn't systems like Mr. Cohen's. What was it? Well, let me just close with this. I'll tell you what's worked for me, and I think not only for me, but is patterned in the Scriptures of almost every tradition. There's this great story about Peter in Acts chapter 10. You know, Peter grew up as an Orthodox Jew, right? And so he had and listened to the dietary laws in the Old Testament, and they were numerous. And Peter, being a good Jew, did not eat things he shouldn't eat. But here's Peter, and I want you to see him. Just see him as I read. About noon the following day, as they were on their journey and approaching the city, Peter went up on the roof to pray. He became hungry and wanted something to eat, and while the meal was being prepared, he fell into a trance. He saw heaven opened and something like a large sheet being let down to earth by its four corners. It contained all manners of four-footed animals, as well as reptiles of the earth and birds of the air. Then a voice told him, "Get up, Peter, kill and eat." "Surely not, Lord," Peter replied. "I have never eaten anything impure or unclean." The voice spoke to him a second time. "Do not call anything impure that God has made clean." This happened 3 times, and immediately the sheet was taken back to heaven. While Peter was wondering about the meaning of this vision, the men sent by Cornelius found out where Simon's house was and stopped at the gate. Now, they were coming because they weren't Jewish and they wanted to know the way of God. And until this vision happened, Peter would not have spoken to them about it because they weren't Jewish. You can't understand all of the changes that are happening in the Newer Testament. So how do I begin to come to grips with what I believe? We have to become open to allowing our beliefs, good reason, and our experience, life experience, to begin to kind of start in a continuous loop. This is what I believe about who I am. Does that seem reasonable? Does that seem to be what God has to say? Is it match my experience? Well, wait a second. No, I don't think that that's really true. Okay, I may not be believing the right thing about this. This is what I believe about whatever it is, about marriage, about parenting, about who my spouse is, about who my friends are, about what I do for a living, about what's the big idea of how do I what is my role in the world? I have to be open to the fact that I don't yet know it. That God is going to give me clues day by day if I'm open and listening and watching. Peter could have said, you know what, I don't trust, this is how I was taught. Growing up in fundamentalism, you're taught this, that you are, I'm grateful that I've almost even forgot the language. Totally depraved. You ever hear the total depravity of man? It's a great self-continuing loop that says, you have to believe the Bible the way we believe it, and you can't use your mind and reason to begin to interpret it because your mind is depraved and you can't trust it. Well, that is the perfect recipe for a cult. Right? Don't think about this. If Peter would have done that, he would have said, well, I don't know what just happened. I guess I just had that vision because I was so hungry. I was so hungry, I almost was ready to break the Old Testament law. Whew, glad I got out of that one. Same thing happened to the Apostle Paul. He was knocked down on the road to Damascus, and God said to him, Saul, Saul, it is hard for you to kick against the pricks, the goads. It's hard for you to go against what you think is happening in you, but you're so convinced of your belief systems. We have to let our reason in. We have to let life experience in. How about Moses? I better stop because I could just do this. Like Moses is in the backside of the desert, right? And what is he thinking about life? He's thinking this. This is what Moses is thinking. He's thinking, I really think I was supposed to get all of those people out of Egypt, all of those Jews, but I blew it and I wasted my one shot, and now I'll never be able to be any good to anyone. I'm just back here. I'm a shepherd in the middle of nowhere. Nobody even knows where I am. And then he sees this bush that's on fire, self-sustaining fire, and he says, I better get aside to see this amazing sight. And a voice comes out of the bush and he says, Moses, Moisha, Moisha. Moses says, yes. I am that I am. And if you would like to do this my way, you'll be successful at it. And Moses says, no, I can't do it. I've already proved it to myself. See, that's a belief system. I've already proved I can't do this. I mean, I tried it once and it didn't work. And God said, you can do it. And Moses said, no, I can't. God said, yes, you can. I mean, this is the conversation that Exodus records for us. And then God said, okay, you know what? I'm going to give you an assistant, and he'll help you, Aaron. And Moses said, okay, but who should I say sent me when I go to let the children of Israel out of Egypt? I am that I am. What's on the right side of the verb? Not a thing. What's on the right side of your verb? Not a thing. You are. That's enough. I don't care if you fill in fast or slow, fat or thin, old or young, strong or weak, with character, bad character, grieving, celebrating. It doesn't matter what you fill in because it's going to change in the next 30 seconds. The only thing that matters is what's on the left side. I am. And when God looks at me, you know what he sees? Joe is. Not what I can do, but just the fact that I am. And he smiles. And if I can relate to him in that way, now listen to me. Existence creates movement. And so there will be activity that comes out of your I amness. But it won't be to prove who you are. See the difference? Sermons don't prove my worth. I give them because of who I am. Let me close with Lewis Carroll. Brilliant. And interestingly enough, Lewis Carroll was a man who loved God and lived in the Anglican Church as a leader. And you remember when Alice came into the Wonderland and the Mad Hatter looked at her and said to her, "You're almost Alice, but you've lost something. Alice is muchier than you. You've lost your muchness," he said to her. What did he mean? He meant she was only living as a shadow of herself. This is why I think this is so important. Because I think a lot of us have lost our muchness. and we've substituted whatever it is people think we should be for muchness. But you-ness is the most important and beautiful thing you have. It's the only thing you have. And in it is the image and likeness of God. And so with Lewis Carroll, I ask myself this week, Ev, have you lost your muchness? Father, help us with this. We know that if that's the case, even if our muchness has been depleted, it doesn't get you angry with us. You just long for us to see and hear what's really true. And as we turn the corner now, God, and look at individual belief systems that we have to change and grow out of, I pray that you would help us to be honest with ourselves. Help us to see and hear what's real, Father. Help us not to live so loud that we can't hear from you. This is our desire, God. Amen. Now listen, friends, Thursday night at 7 is an amazing opportunity. Meditation time, contemplation, centering prayer. Several of you, many of you were here last week for the first time, and I was so pleased. And Pamela is going to be leading this week at 7 o'clock. It's a time to get quiet and to listen. And that's when you hear the voices. My voices. I'm not going to preach another sermon, don't worry. But I've actually grown to not hate them, but kind of look at them with pity now. But I'm beginning to identify them. And meditation has helped me more than any single thing, just getting quiet. And so I want to invite you into that. Next week, we're going to start looking, a week from next week, please forgive me, we're going to start looking at individual belief systems, and the first one is going to be, what do we believe about fear? I think this is the one that throws us the most in subtle ways. We're going to unpack it and kind of come at it. So thank you, you guys. Have a great day. You're dismissed.
That's how